Canada, whose work for over 25 years has focused on helping men heal from what they were never given the language, the safety, or the permission to actually face. Janel works deeply with trauma, attachment patterns, anxiety, grief, and the quieter forms of pain so many men actually carry behind the competence, the silence, the anger, or the disconnection that men hold. Her practice is grounded in EMDR, but what stands out even more is the kind of space she seems to create: steady, non-judgmental, and safe enough for men to begin telling the truth. This conversation tonight is not about turning men into projects or reducing healing to a technique. It's about what happens when someone has spent years coping, holding it all together, and finally reaches the place where the old ways stop working. It's about shame. It's about nervous system protection and the difficult yet sacred work of becoming reachable again. Welcome to my back porch, Janel. So, what are you drinking? This is the first question I always ask everybody when they come on.
Oh my goodness, really? I'm drinking Chinese herbal tea from my traditional Chinese medicine doctor.
You know, everybody that comes on here is like drinking some version of tea, and I'm always drinking coffee. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I've never really liked tea before, but now I'm starting to wonder if I'm missing out on something profound that
There are lots
obviously I
of
need
different
to
kinds
learn.
of tea. I mean, I'm drinking herbal tea from Tracy, my TCM, my acupuncturist, really, that most people don't like. Some people have to put it in capsules, they can't drink it. But I mix it with like honey and milk, kind of like I might a coffee, so it makes it
Right?
more palatable.
There you go.
Yeah,
Well, I can just about drink anything if you fill it with lots of milk and sugar, right?
yeah, it's true. So that's what I do.
So, Janelle, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate this greatly. And I
Mm.
think, where we should probably start with this one is, who is Janelle and what do you do? And then, like, why do you do it?
Yeah, so I'm a master's level counselor. Then I came back to Vancouver and I did my practicum hours at a place that was working with all trauma clients. And it was working with men who had all been sexually abused as children. And interestingly, at that time, I had a lot of experience working with trauma, and then I realized my private practice was even filled with working with guys, even though I wasn't advertising for the men. And so I started seeing people in my private practice that were men struggling with overwhelm, trauma, depression, feeling lost in life, relationship struggles, and all the other types of things that guys might also struggle with. And then, yeah, so now all these years later, I pretty much consider myself a trauma therapist that works with the guys.
You work with the guys. So
Yeah.
then let's start the conversation with this way. Why do men come to you?
Well, I think what happened was that I'm just super friendly and super non-judgmental and super like they felt like their guard could come down and I wasn't going to judge them. I think a lot of men feel really nervous to go speak to certain people, practitioners, because there's a lot of I don't know, negative talk in the world about guys that's been going on for a lot of years, even since I was in college, and I was in college in the 90s. And so a lot has made it so that guys don't feel comfortable, like they're just going to be judged, or that their needs and feelings aren't right, or they're not, accurate, or they don't matter. And when working with me, and I didn't even ask for it, but the guys just started coming, and then they would stick around for weeks, months, years, and really, really do the work. And so I really think it must just be the non-judgmental nature. Like I tell them, like sometimes I say, I'm not God. I'm not here to judge you. Like I'm just here to help you get through this.
So what's going on in a guy's life that causes him to go Google somebody like Janelle?
A lot of times I think it can be anxiety and overwhelm. Like so many pressures, like financial pressures, family pressures, maybe going through divorce, maybe going through loss, maybe going through career change, relationship issues. Relationships are big. I wouldn't say that I'm like a marriage counselor, but I do mainly one-on-one therapy with people, but definitely can talk with them about what the relationship struggles are. Yeah, anxiety would probably be the number one thing I would say that brings people in, like the sense of overwhelm and stress that people feel is kind of like, oh my God, I cannot stay living this way. I have to do something about it. I find depression is a little bit more like low mood, low energy, don't care about things anymore, where anxiety is like, I can't handle it. I need help.
Right.
So, yeah.
So when men are coming to you, do they is there patterns that you can sit there and say, men come to me before everything collapses, or are men coming to you when everything collapses and now it's like, you know what, I gotta go see a therapist?
You know what? Probably a bit of both. And in this day and age, like even recently, I had somebody come to me who was like, "I just want to get ahead of this before it really causes more problems." So people are starting to act more early on now. Years ago, therapy wasn't such a well accepted thing in society, but now
Right.
a lot of men are coming to therapy, and a lot of them come wanting to just figure themselves out. I have a lot of male clients who are in their early 20s even,
Mhm.
might have just started working. They pay for their own therapy. Maybe they have some benefits, and they're just like, I want to figure out a thing that a lot of people understand these days is attachment patterns.
Mhm.
And so this is showing up in relationships in adulthood, and it stems from childhood relationships with their parents. And people are coming in knowing the lingo now these days, which is fantastic because there's so much information online.
Right.
Some people come in the middle of it though, where it's just like stuff is falling apart. And sometimes they'll feel like, oh my goodness, there's like too much happening. How can we, like, I don't even know where to start. And, but that's where I come in to help them sort of figure out where are we going to start? What are we going to look at? What order are we going to do this in?
So there's a lot of talk going again, watching what's happening on social media about the state and the condition of men, certainly
Mm,
Western men,
mm-hmm.
at this time, this generations that are sort of inhabiting the world now. Are you finding that there kind of is a theme of what's going on with men right now, or an underlying challenge that is kind of generic to men the way social media talks?
Um, I don't actually think so. I see a completely different side of guys and how society talks about things and how people online talk about relationships. And I think men say, like from the Western cultures and North America, well, Canada and the US, Canada mainly, that I know about mostly because that's where I am. I think of guys as being these amazing people who actually care about their partners and care about their families and want to work and want to try to be happy. And I see a completely different side than I think what most people think of.
Then why are they getting so many divorces?
Well, there's some big differences between men and women. I think that
Okay.
I kind of wrote a book about this stuff once, but it became so political when I started talking about it online that it was like just causing too much stress. And I thought this is really taking away from my actual work that I love so much.
Okay.
So I decided not to publish it. But the way women show up in relationship is quite different than the way men show up in relationship. And I think women want men to be more like women and to be able to just like talk about our day and just talk about the details of things. Um, and often it's men just don't care to chat about the same things we do as as much. And so I think it can be hard for women to really feel that they're getting the relationship out of the guy that they really want, or that we see in the movies, or that we think we should have, or that our girlfriends tell us we should have. Because like men are actually very different than women, how they show up. And I think personally, if we could accept that and see it more clearly for what it is, most people would be a lot happier.
So obviously, there's a lot of conversations now about men who are, as a society, that men are perhaps not evolving to where our societies are moving, and that as the women's movement and women are growing and transforming and changing their understanding of what it means to be female, that
Mm-hmm.
maybe men are not necessarily keeping up on par. What would you say to women that are saying, like, I can't do this anymore, I can't be with somebody that doesn't meet me here? And we're not just talking emotions, right?
Yeah, well, I think it really depends on the history and what all has gone on. Some people just can't, men and male and female, can't have the deep conversations. Like if somebody's bringing a topic up, they get defensive and it goes nowhere and they get stuck in this pattern. And that happens a lot where people just aren't able to sit down and really listen to each other. A lot of that comes from unresolved childhood wounds, which is the trauma piece, where things from the past are getting triggered, a parent that was too critical, or a parent who wasn't there at all, or maybe somebody who was even abusive, like all this sorts of stuff. If a person hasn't worked on healing, it is going to get triggered up in the background in our current life situations. And a really good goal is to be able to understand when that is happening, that past stuff is getting triggered up, and what is happening in the current moment, so that a person could respond more from their adult self in their adult love relationship today. But most people don't understand all of that stuff. And it can be really, really like deep, deep work that needs to be done. So some people will just not be able to be in relationship.
Well, and I guess the obvious question from it, it's interesting. I hear a lot of people, certainly social media talks about trauma, big T trauma, little T trauma. Big T trauma being we witness some sort of violence or something horrible in front of us, but small T trauma being along the lines of repeated exposure to things that wounded and
yeah, like being called stupid all the time,
sure.
or stuff like that. Yeah.
How come or why is our society struggling so hard to see at least small T trauma in men? We can all recognize, we all understand big T trauma, how that's going to scar people, but why are we unable to see this small T trauma, especially in men, or to at least grace it?
Well, because I think they might not really realize themselves what it is that has gone on for them that might be causing some problems, or be some men are really willing to take a look at themselves now, absolutely.
Right.
But it can be really hard to identify some of those things. I think it can be really hard for some people if they haven't done a deep dive into therapy to understand that some of these things had happened, were actually so bad and had such a lasting effect.
So can you use a word for us that's not trauma? So I'm not trying to minimize the word. That's not what I'm trying to understand. It's just that if we're going to be looking at everything within the lens of trauma, sometimes it's hard for men to say, I've not been traumatized, so what are you talking about? What is this small T trauma?
Another way to explain it. So I guess if I would think of it as like a repeated thing from their childhood, usually, or from something in the past where like it really had a negative impact on the person. So it could be from relationships too, as somebody got older, where the nervous system hasn't really been able to process it to let it go. And so when things get stuck and are still sort of affecting life today.
What does it look like in our lives if it's there?
Well, people show up a lot with very poor or very little self-esteem. Self-esteem and confidence or lack of, really is a driving force, I think, for a lot of people. A lot of my clients, I find, have a negative belief that they're carrying around of I'm not good enough. For some reason, it seems like 99% of my clients will have this negative belief of I'm not good enough. And I often will say, like, I wonder why our parents aren't making us feel like we're good enough. Like, they're not making us feel, really loved and adored and like we really should love ourselves and own our place on the planet. People are not showing up into adulthood feeling that way. And so when a lot of people are functioning from a place of insecurity, not feeling good enough, low self-esteem, then those drivers happening in the background really are going to have a result of people being like, saying like overly compensating for it in certain behaviors, or self-medicating with certain kinds of like drugs, alcohol, workaholism, all sorts of things.
Doesn't self-esteem, like, isn't that everybody? Doesn't everybody have low self-esteem? Doesn't everybody have imposter syndrome? Or are there people that actually don't have this?
I think
sort of narcissists.
Yeah, no, people that grew up in a really loving home where they were properly supported and able to be themselves and find their way, and parents who are very supportive, and the parents who are a safe home base for children can absolutely grow up having like proper self-esteem. I don't think it happens very much, but it does happen.
So what are the things that I am looking for in my life as a man to say, you know what, there's something unprocessed here that because I'm playing out my life this way, this way, this way, or this way, it's like, these are probably signs that I need to
Mm.
stop and take a look. What do those signs look like for
Um,
myself or as a spouse?
or as a spouse, might be like not being able to keep a job or staying in jobs that are very low paying, but not feeling comfortable to make a change or ask for a raise, like feeling like really sort of like holding back, not having the courage to really stand up for themselves. Or in other aspects could be not standing up for themselves when they might be in an abusive relationship or getting bullied at work or getting bullied by friends. That bullying happens in the adult world also, unfortunately. Could show up like drinking too much, gambling, overeating, um, spending money in other ways, or not spending money on things. Like I once knew person, not a person, not a client, but where they had money, they had a job, but they wouldn't buy anything for themselves. And even their socks that they were wearing had like major holes in them. They wouldn't even buy socks for themselves. So not allowing yourself to really even think that you're deserving of a new pair of socks, that kind of thing.
So, what about in relationships and men in roles in families? What does it look like when we have unprocessed trauma or lower emotional abilities? What does it look like in a relationship?
Well, for some people, they definitely become people pleasers or
Mm,
chameleons. So either they might be drinking too much to kind of like numb out or overcompensating by like just being maybe aggressive and like trying to like bully people. That
right.
shows up that way. But also, people pleasing is something I actually work quite a bit with. People will
Okay.
come in and be like, everybody else in my life is happy except for me, and I'm suicidal. And because they're just taking care of everybody, taking care of everybody, taking care of everybody, and their needs are not even on the priority list.
I hear people talk about people pleasing all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
obviously want to be looking for such things in my life and whatnot, but I've never really always got a great definition of what people pleasing is. Isn't that being respectable, nice, and a proper member of society?
Yeah, no. So people pleasing, from my perspective, what I work with is when clients are like overdoing it. So they're kind of like become a chameleon. And so this can happen for all sorts of different reasons. Maybe their childhood needs in the family home weren't met, so they're looking for another family, like to kind of replace the family they didn't really have in childhood. So that can turn into people pleasing. So that can show up in relationships, it can show up in friendships, it can show up at work, where they're kind of like really, really taking care of everybody else, so that other people really see them in a positive light. Like, oh, other people are going to want me around them. They're going to accept me. They're going to love me. I can feel good about myself. It's like the innate feeling good about themselves and loving themselves isn't in there. So that's where I
So,
come in, is to work on that.
can I be a people pleaser and not know it?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Because some people think it's a good way to show up in society, like you were just mentioning. But ultimately, like it really just depletes people. Like they become so exhausted. Everybody else is doing fine, and they are just exhausted and feeling terrible because they actually have needs, but they're not putting them on the table, and they're not even maybe in some cases allowing themselves to realize that they have needs, such as like when they're sick, they should take a day off and allow their spouse to take care of them. Like that's actually okay.
Right.
Or, but somebody who's a people pleaser would not even let other people know when they're not feeling well or when they're overworked or when they're exhausted. Like they just won't show any of that because, well, other people might not like me then. I don't want to be a burden.
You had referenced and mentioned earlier attachment styles. So, when we think of those four sort of attachment styles that we see all over the internet, the secure, the anxious, the avoidant, the fearful avoidant,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes those attachment styles get genderized and
Mm-hmm.
assumed that it's the women that are anxious, the men that are dismissive avoidance,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and whatever else. In your experience, how does this play? Are these attachment of the ways that people connect with each other? Does it show up in the patterns of men across the line? And if so, is it look different than it does in women?
I see a lot of men who have anxious attachment where they just like never felt properly loved in childhood. They really have this need inside themselves to be seen and loved and heard and accepted. And if it wasn't done by mom and dad in childhood, then they're going to look forward in their primary love relationships in adulthood. And so I meet a lot of anxious attachment style, like guys who are like really freaked out about relationships, can't get over a relationship that ended, constantly beating themselves up that that relationship ended, even if it wasn't good for them. They can't move past it, or then they see somebody else and get very quickly attached to a new love relationship, like just adoring them and really going over the top for somebody when they don't even know them because they really want this love to work. But so there's a lot of few different ways I work with somebody like that. There definitely are attached, or sorry,
Anxious,
avoidant men,
avoidant, yeah.
obviously. But I think I actually commented on something online about this earlier today or last night about uh, somebody saying, "Oh, all men are the same." You know, you get involved with them, and then they all disappear, and you know they're all the same. So my comment was actually the way women show up at the beginning of relationships has a big effect on whether a man is going to want to be in relationship or not. So like women have more control than they want to give themselves, and the women are going to show up some ways that men find appealing and there's somebody that they want to keep dating, or some men are out there if they're too young or they just got out of a marriage and they're not wanting a relationship again, so they're just out there dating to have fun. And so I think for women it's like take a moment and think about, who is this person, what is the background, is this person actually wanting a relationship, or are they just kind of like really flirting and having fun and talking about holidays in the future because they're like just having fun and wanting to go on holidays, but they're not actually looking for a real relationship? Or is this person in a mature place in their life? Have they been out of their last relationship for a while? Are they actually ready for something real? And then if they are, then you know women are that that person dates is going to have to carry themselves in a certain way that that person is going to see them as relationship material. Mostly when younger people are dating these days, they younger. I mean, I just turned 50, so younger to me is like, let's say 40 or younger. People will go out drinking, they get drunk, they have sex on a first date. It's very, very, very common. It wasn't as common even when I was a kid. And then even because it's so common and people are doing it so much, but like relationships aren't lasting, but that is like a lot of the times I would say 100% of the reason. Like if a woman is showing up on a date and she's just drinking a lot and having sex on the first date, a guy is not going to see her as somebody he wants to have a relationship with because she's sleeping with everybody on a first date. So this is just one
So is
example.
he.
Well, yes, but she'll want to continue the relationship, but he won't, right? So these are one of the differences between men and women. And some people say it's hypocritical, but I think it's biology. There's a lot of like biological differences between men and women, which society doesn't want to talk about. Yeah.
So men come to you. Their lives are saying that I need to address some emotional immaturity. I need to address areas where I shut myself down. I need to address traumas. I need to address, little t traumas or behaviors that are playing out, or I need to address the way that I connect with my spouse or my family. Does this mean I got to sit on or lay on your couch with a Kleenex and cry in front of you and pour out my heart and we got to talk through all this shit again? Is that the way it works?
Well, I mean, for some people, maybe. For some
Okay.
people, maybe. For years and years, I didn't even have a couch in my office. Everybody always sat in the same chair. But then I recently got a couch because I would have couples in occasionally. So I'm like, oh, I just need a little bit more space in here. So now I have a couple of people actually like to take off their shoes and lay down, which is this new thing
Really?
that's happening. Yeah. But some people will need to cry it out for sure, depending on what childhood experiences were. Depends what they've worked on with other therapists already or not. But the approach that I specialize in really, I mean, I do EMDR. I'm almost full time EMDR therapist across the board for like 20 years now.
You
And
dovetailed me just perfectly, just so you know. So, just to stop you, for those of us that really don't know what that is, can you
mhm.
explain what EMDR and then show us the magic that you think EMDR actually accomplishes?
Yeah, so EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It started out as eye movements. The person who discovered this, Francine Shapiro, from what I remember readings like a really long time ago, was that she was sick with cancer and living in a hospital. But what I remember reading is that she was out walking on the hospital grounds and she was feeling particularly glum. You know, she's in the hospital with cancer. She wasn't like emotionally feeling great. And she noticed her eyes just do a little back and forth. And she felt emotionally better. The walking would have probably helped also because walking is a little bit of EMDR, right, left, right, left. So this is, we call it bilateral stimulation. So bilateral, we get the two hemispheres of the brain talking to each other. So anyway, she felt her eyes go back and forth really quickly, and she felt noticeably better emotionally. So then she did it again herself. Like she was kind of like, "What the heck was that?" So she moved her eyes back and forth, and she felt better. And then, so whatever happened, she needed to do, she did it to heal her cancer. Got out, started doing a lot of research around these eye movements, and worked with the two client bases that I know of that she worked with were war vets who were struggling with PTSD, who were in California, who had come back from Vietnam and had great success with that client group, and then also was working with rape survivors and had great success with that client group. And I think at that time she didn't really know what it did. It just said it absolutely worked. She was seeing such incredible results. So she developed some protocols, started to be able to teach it to other people, and then EMDR was born. So what we know now is that it gets the two hemispheres of the brain activated, right, left, and when that's happening, the two hemispheres start talking to each other in a very special way. And now we know with more and more research that it basically replicates REM sleep.
I was just going to say, it sounds like rapid eye movement when we're sleeping.
Yeah. So rapid eye movement is phase of our sleep cycle where we go into deep healing mode and our eyes go back and forth really quickly. And it activates, the reading I've done on is that it activates a healing mechanism in our nervous system when we go to sleep at night and we get into that phase of our sleep cycle where our brain and body go into deep healing mode.
Just to understand, and I'm putting this in the most layman language, you're actually saying that you teach people to move their eyes back and forth?
No, we do. So in session, the practitioners in the past would move their hand back and forth or in a circle or on an angle, and clients would follow.
Okay.
Follow with their eyes. But then some people got really smart and developed machines to help us. So my machine in my office here I've had since 2007, and it plugs into the wall, which is helpful because it has a light that goes back and forth. But very few of my clients ever use the light. I actually have handheld pulsers that vibrate back and forth, right, left, and so the nerve endings in your hands are connected to your brain. Does the same activity as the eye movements, except my clients can have their eyes closed. Wow. And do the processing, which can be really helpful because a lot of clients will be sort of like looking out here and sort of be out here, but I want them in their body because, you know, there's that famous book, The Body Keeps the Score. A lot of the healing actually happens in the body, not up here. But when we have this bilateral stimulation happening, I'll just mention when I do it on Zoom, I use sounds. So I'll send a link to clients and they have headphones in and we use sounds. And when this is happening in the brain, they see on brain imaging now. I went to an EMDR Canada conference a while ago, and they were showing images of people's brains who were having EMDR happening right then, and they could see a part of the brain on the right side start lighting up, and then started talking to a part of the brain on the left side, and like those two parts of the brain were not talking to each other before. So now, the two hemispheres do get closely like connected in a special way. And the way I describe it to people is just that the brain is then able to reorganize the memory networks, start healing the emotions. And then we can also do a deep dive into healing people's belief systems. So I'm Not Good Enough is often one that I work on with people. And because the brain knows, like the brain and body know how to heal ourselves when we're given the right set of circumstances, such as like if you have a broken leg and you put a cast on it, straighten it, put a cast on it, use crutches, it's going to heal. Cognitively, we don't heal it, but the nervous system knows how to heal it. Or if we get a cut or we've had surgery. And so I think of EMDR as the same kind of physiological healing as what would happen in REM sleep when we're asleep, except we get this activity going in people's nervous systems. We, as in practitioners like myself, when clients are awake and in our office, and we tell the brain like kind of where to go, what to do, what to look at, and then I develop a treatment plan. So like you were saying before, if somebody comes in and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, I'll sort of get an idea of what's going on and then develop a treatment plan with different protocols that I've learned over the years to be able to walk people through like kind of a structured way to get through stuff so that we don't just get lost in their subconscious where things need to get reorganized.
So The EMDR process, whether or not it's your eyes looking or your hands feeling or
Yeah,
sound that's going
yeah,
back and forth,
yeah.
is it fixing a actual problem in our mind, in our brain, where two parts of our brain are not talking to each other, or is it recreating a new neurological process and rewiring our nervous system, or are they doing all of it?
Yeah, I think in a way, like you could think of it as doing all of it. Because the way memory works is that we kind of fill in a bit of the gaps to be able to make the memories and whatnot. But really, like I think of it as it moving stuff around to ultimately file things properly to long-term memory. And then when events that were stuck, like some sort of traumatic event, we get it moved along to long-term memory. Negative beliefs that were created at the time of the event, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm a failure, those negative beliefs also sort of get let go of. And so like the brain is able to do these wonderful things all like in the subconscious and in the body that cognitively we don't even fully understand. I mean, then we also put in new positive belief systems. So
Okay.
I'm good enough. I'm learning to love myself. I can put it behind me now. It's in the past. I can be successful and move forward in my life, whatever it might be for each person. We can, with EMDR, sort of install, we call those installations, a resource installation, where we sort of get those things anchored in a person's nervous system, and then they have like a new set of software that they're
And
functioning from.
can people do this? Can you get over a horrible trauma that happened to us? Can you,
Yeah.
or can you get over the small ones, the wounds? Can
Oh
you
yeah, yeah. So there
really?
would be different, yeah, there would be different protocols to be used for those things. But like one example comes to mind where I was working with somebody years ago, and we'd done a bunch of work on some other things, and then they said, I have this one thing that's been haunting me, that happened, and I think about it every day, and it's been haunting me for 20 years. So for that particular thing, we did one session on it, and it was gone. And
In
like
one
they just
session?
what, but I had already done a bunch of other work with them, so
Okay,
they're very
okay.
familiar with the EMDR. We were already been doing some work, and then we worked on this one thing that they said, I've been like haunted by this every day for 20 years, and the nervous system let it go, moved it along, so it wasn't upsetting for him anymore.
Wow.
Yeah,
Let
and
me
that's just one
ask,
example where that particular thing was
right.
very quick. So uh, and maybe just before you say your
Yeah,
other
yeah.
question, I just want to mention like there's going to be different protocols that you use for different things. So if it's like, say, somebody was in a massive car accident or somebody saw somebody die or whatever it might be, like if somebody saw somebody jump out a window or then there'll be like a certain kind of protocol for that. If it was like a parent or like a gym coach or a teacher calling a kid stupid all the time, you're a failure, you're going to amount to nothing, that's going to require sort of like a different kind of protocol
Approach.
to go in and do some like deep childhood stuff and heal some attachment wounds and stuff. So the nice thing about EMDR is that it's evolved so much over the years that there's so many protocols that have been developed that we can use depending on whatever it is a client comes in with, what they want to work on, what their past is. So it can really be tailored for each person.
So then let me ask the question that's so simple that it's actually profound.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why? Like, what is, how am I going to change and why would I want to do this? In other words, is there that notable of a change that's going to touch
Yeah.
my
So
life?
yeah, so one of the things a lot of clients will come in with is saying that their spouse says that they're a lot more patient and just like a lot more chill. It's kind of like the edge just gets taken off. Or a lot of people will end up like anxiety goes down. They start feeling better about themselves. Self-esteem and confidence can improve when somebody starts liking themselves and we get the traumas out of the way and a person can start having a better relationship with themselves. It's
Right,
such a different platform from which their
right.
life can then function or a different foundation that so many things change. It's really very profound work, and I find that
Yeah,
it continues to do healing in people's nervous systems, even if haven't worked with them for a while. It's still working.
really. It
Hmm.
sounds like you're teaching people how to move past the things that cause us to live in trigger mode and move to regulated mode is what it's my head is hearing.
Yeah. So, I mean, teaching tools is kind of like something I might do at the beginning, or not might do. I do that at the beginning of working with people so that they can manage in between sessions.
Mhm.
Certain grounding strategies that I've learned over the years that are very helpful. But those tools come in handy for a person for their life. Basically, they can use them whenever. But the actual EMDR healing is not a teaching thing. It's like the brain and body actually heals things by reorganizing the memory networks and healing up the emotions and letting go of the negative beliefs. And it all happens in the subconscious and like in our body. So like our nervous system runs through our whole body. So people will feel like tension in their stomach and we have to work through that, or they're going to feel like a real heavy weight in their chest and we work through that as part of the therapy. There's a real like checking out the body part of all this.
Does it ever make it worse?
Does it ever make it worse?
Does it ever make it worse? Is it always...
What can happen? The reason we teach the tools at the beginning is because if somebody's had like some really bad experiences, say there was a lot of childhood trauma, they haven't worked on this before, there's a good chance that some of that stuff is going to resurface because we're trying to like, in a way, like dig up the negative things or the traumatic things so that the brain can reorganize that stuff and move it along. Our memories are kind of like, we can sort of think of them as like data files that get created by our sensory organs that get thrown into the brain. And so the brain can then reorganize like where the visual pieces are, where the auditory pieces are, where the smell, the taste, the feelings, all that stuff are, you know, pieces of our memories that our brain is working on. And so it can reorganize stuff and then move it along to long-term memory once it feels like it has a sense of mastery to it.
Right.
And then it's not bothersome anymore because it's moved it away from the emotions into a different part of the brain where the emotions aren't like fueled or getting triggered anymore. But it's not really like a teaching. It's like we go through it and kind of walk through the traumas. So the stuff comes up and then the nervous system heals it. And then some of that stuff does occasionally surface in between clients. But I always teach clients the tools, try to explain to them why I need to teach them the tools. And then not all practitioners would do this, but I tell clients, like, if you are really having a hard time at some moment in between sessions, like, just text me. I can do a little bit of grounding with you.
So what about the apps? People, go online. There's the apps. YouTube has forever going, but those kind of processes.
Yeah,
why not self-help?
Those of us who are properly trained in EMDR do not support these apps because
Really?
I actually had because trauma. Essentially, I think of trauma as like something the brain hasn't been able to heal itself. Okay. And that it needs help and support. And so finding the person to work with is a really important part of healing trauma. And then also with EMDR, because it's so powerful of like turning the brain on in this natural way for wanting to heal things, it can stir stuff up. I've had clients come to me and say, oh my goodness, I did some self-EMDR thing. I totally messed up my nervous system. I don't know what I did to myself. You need to help me. Like, you need to fix me. Like, I'm totally a mess. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And so those of us who, like my governing bodies, like it probably says on their website somewhere, we do not support self-EMDR because somebody, or also like if somebody is, say, like really struggling with some serious psychiatric problem and they're trying to do some self-EMDR, I mean, if somebody's bipolar or if somebody's like dealing with like, it's like major depression or anything that's like really serious psychiatric problem, like they're going to need proper support. Doesn't mean we can't do EMDR with those people, but there's going to be certain measures we want to make sure are in place so that we can work safely with somebody. But if they're just out there trying to wing it on their own, I mean, it's really not going to be good for them. Like finding somebody who can properly walk you through a healing journey with it is definitely the right thing to do. I tell clients if they want to EMDR themselves, because there are these different programs out there, go for a long walk. Just a little bit of EMDR. This is why we love walking, riding bikes, running, all these sorts of things. It's like right, left. It's why we pace in waiting rooms when somebody's had surgery. It's a way to self-regulate, right, left, the nervous system. Yeah, things that the nervous system do on their own. So I tell people just go for a long walk. Like don't try to self-EMDR yourself. If somebody has done a bunch of healing work with a practitioner like myself, and down the road they can find a program of just like doing this little like gentle back and forth, but more of a calming, self-soothing, turn off the day so I can relax kind of way. That would probably be safe, but I would never suggest for anybody to like try to do their own healing work and deal with their traumas and work on all their stuff on their own. It's not going to do really anything.
So if you could say something to therapists or partners or friends What are they often getting wrong when it comes to trying to work with men and getting men to open up? What is it that people or other even professionals are missing?
Well, I think men just automatically feel very judged. Like and so like being very, very, very non-judgmental, right? Like who are we to judge anybody? If they're coming in to get help about a certain problem, like we should have all the amounts of respect in the world for that because it's not easy to come and talk to a stranger. There's a reason people
Yeah.
talk to strangers, right? Because we're not in their family group or their friend group, right? So we can, have like an objective view. But I think there's just so much, I want to call it propaganda out there. Like men are so terrible and everything men do is wrong and men are always the problem. Women are never to be blamed and right. And it's just not true. Like if a man comes in and they say, hey, my partner is super abusive, which absolutely happens that female partners are abusive to male clients, a lot of guys are going to be like, nobody's going to believe me. Who's going to believe me? So they're not going to reach out for help. Somehow
Wow.
I have been able to work with a lot of these people. I guess male clients or male counselors might have a little bit more perspective of that for male clients, and more men are reaching out for help these days. But I think like for female practitioners to work with men, it's just like try to get the biases out of your head because there's a lot of amazing men out there who are
Mm.
not abusive and who are struggling also and don't just have life handed to them on a silver platter. And the I think like the biases that a lot of women carry around already, whether they mean to or not, are probably really difficult to work with male clients properly if they have
Well,
those.
and there's biases out there. There's stories that we self-perpetuate, but there's also truth to some of the myth as well. It's a big reality that the world is trying to address now. I think that's why people are doing
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing right now. There's a reason, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you wish? And I'm going to read this question actually word for word to make sure I ask it the right way. What do you wish more women understood about how trauma can live inside men without excusing harmful behavior?
Well, just that they have like a range of feelings and that they do have trauma and that there might be a wounded little boy inside of themselves that never healed, who grew up in an abusive household or grew up without a mother or grew up without a father or maybe grew up with an abusive mother. Like I know so many stories of abusive mothers or people who are abused by women when they're children, all sorts of ways, even girls who are sexually abused by women. I've heard so many of these situations. And I think it's just really important to understand that a person can come in with any sort of background story from their childhood that a counselor might have a hard time really understanding, like, oh, this is actually this person's reality. Like maybe this person as a boy was sexually abused by their female babysitter for years.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
it absolutely happens. But it's a side of things that nobody's talking about. And
Right.
so it might be difficult for some practitioners to be able to instantly say, okay, this is what's really happened to this person. They might struggle with it a little bit.
So why do you specialize with men, and why are there so few people that do?
Well, I worked with the agency when I was first doing my practicum placement. I got hired on there and I worked there for 3 years, which I mentioned in Vancouver is working with all men who are trauma survivors. And then I also worked at a methadone clinic on East Hastings years ago in 2002. And so many of those clients were men. And then even when I went to university in England. And so even when I was doing some practicum work there, a lot of my clients were men. And so somehow I just was always having like quite a lot of male clients. And when I worked at that one agency for 3 years, it was only male clients. They only served a male demographic. And then in my private practice, like the universe just sort of made it so. Like guys were coming in and doing the work with me, even like not sexual abuse survivors. There were so many other kinds of problems. And so I could see, and it was about the 3 year mark, 2007. I've been in private practice for 3 years and I was making a new website and everything. And I had to sort of see like, what is actually happening in my practice? What are the things I'm actually working with? And my practice was like 95% guys who had been coming for like weeks, months, maybe at that point, even like a year or two to really, really dig in and do the work. And I just can only say it must be my friendly nature and non-judgmental way of like just wanting to accept them where they're at.
So then maybe the last question I'm going to ask of you is, you talk about men doing the work, men that are doing healing. What
Hmm.
does doing the work and healing look like in a man who has done the work and healed? He went from to become. Is this, I used to be Frankenstein and
Hmm.
now I am
Hmm.
Pope Leo? What does this look like? Do I become a better man? Do I become a nicer man? Do I become a moral
Yeah,
man?
yeah, all sorts of it. I mean, there's so many. I've worked with way over 1,000 clients over the years that cause I've been doing this for so long. But I think people just become more comfortable inside of themselves. I've often say, or probably say to everybody at some point, that no matter what somebody's coming in to get help for, ultimately the work is about giving a person a good relationship with themselves. And if like mom and dad or their childhood experiences weren't able to give them that, I see kind of as like the therapy can give that to them. And if a person's going out in the world is with feeling like they have a good relationship with themselves, and they're more understanding, they're more patient, they're more comfortable in their own skin, so they're not having to like act out in an aggressive way. The way that they talk can be a lot more just assertive and straightforward, and less like emotional, or less like shame based, less judgmental of other people. Like a person can just hold their own in the world and feel like so much more comfortable in their own skin. And then all the positives come from that place. And it's just such a good place to get people to.
Janelle, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. I'm going to make sure that everybody, you're tagged and everybody can find out how to contact you on. I do this with everybody that shows up on my porch, and I try to share. I'm a big believer in noticing what I am feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I always want to make sure I leave every guest that's had a chance to chat with us. When I listen to you and I listen to and notice what it is that I am feeling, I listen to Janelle and I go, conviction. This is a person. I feel conviction, and I feel a measure of courage, and feel a sense of clarity when you speak, which
Mm-hmm.
is just ultimately got to be respected. And I
Thanks.
appreciate it. And I say that just so that that
Mm-hmm.
people actually sense this around you. And that's probably more of the reason why people come back more than anything else.
Yeah, could
Listen,
be. Thanks.
thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we will, of course, be in touch. We've got some things that we're talking about down the line.
Mm-hmm.
But it has been a pleasure having you here tonight. And for those of you that are joining us tonight live, thank you so much for coming to my back porch. Thank you so much for sitting down and sharing this last 45 minutes to an hour with us. We appreciate this greatly. This is something we do every Monday night, live, sitting down, having a cup of coffee or tea, and just sharing at a very different level, talking as though we were just sitting around talking about life in a very honest and transparent way. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you next week right here on the Porch Club.